You're watching PowerNation. Today on Carcass, we continue work on our 96 Tahoe. We tackled the rear drum brakes, replacing the worn out pads and drums.
Plus, our rear end is a little sloppy, so we'll tighten it up. We'll add new bearings and seals, then we'll show you how to set up the ring and pinion to make it run nice and quiet. Hey everybody, welcome to Carcass. Well, we are back on our 1996 tuckered out Tahoe, and we've done a bunch of work so far up here to the front suspension, the steering, and the brakes, trying to make this thing roadworthy again.
And now we're transitioning onto the back, and we have a few things to do, but I'm gonna get started with the brakes. And obviously this is a drum setup, which is a little more complex than the disc and caliper up front. And we're gonna show you guys how to take care of it. So we've got some Duralast parts, we've got the drums, the shoes, and all the hardware with it. So I'm going to get the old stuff pulled down and we'll see what we're working with. So I've got the drum off and I've been looking at this for a second, and the shoes are a little bit worn, but this one over here has a big crack all the way across. And then the other thing that I noticed, which is maybe a bigger issue, there's a lot of grease built up here and maybe the axle seal is going bad. So I'm not even going to touch the brakes right now. I would rather kind of get the rear end torn apart, get the axle out. And not only will that give me room to do the brakes, but then we can just go ahead and replace the axle seal. After removing the cover, I'll spray it down with some brake cleaner to clean it up a little bit, and then I'll scrape the gasket surface to get it ready for when I seal it back up. I've got the cover off and I've done some cleaning, so I'm going to take this bolt out and then the pin, and then I can take the C-clips out and then I can pull the axles. Taking the C-clips out can be a little bit tricky, and using a magnet can definitely help with that. Once I remove the axle seal, I'll go ahead and start disassembling the brake system, paying attention to how the components are assembled. After that, I'll remove the wheel cylinder and the axle bearing. After everything is disassembled, I'll give it a good cleaning to get ready to reinstall the new parts. I have the old brakes torn off of the axle and I've got the backing plate cleaned up. So now we can put our Duralast brake parts on it. I'm just going to start with the wheel cylinder and kind of work in the backwards order. Like I mentioned earlier, we're replacing our brake system with Duralast brake components. All of our components match OE quality specifications and help deliver quiet, more efficient braking performance. All the necessary hardware is included to complete the installation, and it will restore the brakes to maximum performance for safe and effective stopping. I've got the brakes all set up here on the passenger side. I still have to hook up the brake line, but I'm just gonna go ahead and get to the driver's side and get this thing done. We disassemble our rear diff and show you some common wear items to look for on your rear end.
All right, well now that Jimmy has the rear brakes pretty much buttoned up, we're gonna continue working on the rear axle here. Now when he pulled the rear diff cover off of here, we noticed quite a bit of debris stuck on the magnet. Plus there is a lot of movement in the ring and pinion. Now backlash specs on this are 6 to 10 thousandths of an inch, and we come in at about 28 to 30 thousandths, so we are way out of spec. So since we're in here this far, we're just gonna go ahead and take care of it. We have to get the carrier out of here and pull the pinion out of the way. We'll throw a bunch of bearings at it, we'll set it all back up, and we'll continue to move forward. When removing your bearing caps, make sure to keep track of what side they come off of. Keep the driver's side on the driver's side and the passenger side on its side. You always make sure when you pop these out, put your hands on here, try to hang on to your shims the best you can. Keep them on the correct side. After removing the drive shaft, I'll remove the pinion nut and slide the pinion out of the way. All right, now that we have everything disassembled, we've run into a couple more issues. First and foremost, this top bearing should not slide on and off the pinion like this. There should be a little bit of resistance. Plus down here on the bottom bearing closest to the gear, there is quite a bit of damage to the actual rollers, and that's actually translated over onto the race, but it's not a big issue. We're gonna replace all this stuff anyways. We have a complete rebuild kit, including bearings and the races. We've got the seals and we've got some shims to set this all back up. So from here, what we need to do is kind of press all the bearings off. We're gonna get all of this cleaned up, and then we're gonna get it all set up back in the Tahoe. Using a bearing separator in the press, we'll remove all of our bearings from our pinion and our ring gear. Oh. There you go. You gonna grab that then?
Scared me.
Okay, so we have all of our parts cleaned up, and we did notice something once we got the carrier cleaned up. If you guys look real close, you can see some marks that are kind of etched into the side here, and our best guess is that's from the pinion being adjusted too deep into the housing here and it making contact. Now, after we inspected the pinion, we looked and there's really no marks on here, so at some point this has all been replaced. So really for the marks that are on here, it's more of a cosmetic thing. There's really no need for us to replace it because it did work just fine. Now, the way you actually adjust this pinion is with a set of shims that go underneath the bearing. And instead of using a bearing that you have to press on and off and on and off, you can go ahead and get a set of setup bearings. These are specifically made for you to be able to slide the bearing on and take the bearing off quite easily, so you can adjust everything to get this riding just right and make sure your pattern on your teeth are just right. So we're gonna start here by putting this up in the truck. We've got our setup bearings. We're gonna run the original shim for now to see where we land. So let's get all this up in the truck. All right, we have new races installed in the housing here and there, so we'll go ahead and slide our pinion into place. Get the back one in. Okay, and we'll do the front bearing here. Follow that up with the yoke, the washer, and then we're gonna go ahead and use the old nut for the front. We don't wanna use the new one until we are 100% done. We'll just grab the impact, and we'll tighten this down. Coming up, we'll show you how to set up your rear end to meet factory tolerances. All right guys, we have our pinion installed and I went ahead and installed the carrier already. Now the number here that we're shooting for is 6 to 10 thousandths of an inch of backlash. Right now we're coming in at about 8 thousandths, almost 9 thousandths of an inch, so we are right there in the middle. But let's say you don't nail that the first time or you have to make adjustments. The way you adjust that is with some shims that usually come with the kit when you get your bearings and such. So let's say you come in a little bit bigger or a little bit smaller. Let's just say you come in at 15 thousandths of an inch. What you're going to want to do is add more shims to your driver's side or the left side or the ring gear side of your carrier and subtract shims from the opposite side or the right side. Now if you take shims away from one side, you have to add that to the other side. That way what you're doing is driving your ring gear a little bit closer to your pinion and you're closing up that gap or that backlash. But since we landed right here at about 8 thousandths of an inch, we're going to call that a win. Now the next step we have to do here is take some of our marking compound, this comes with the kit as well, and our little acid brush here. And we're going to go ahead and paint at least 5 of the teeth on the ring gear up here. We're going to spin our pinion over and then we're going to go ahead and check our pattern. All right, that pattern looks really good. We're not too deep, we're not too shallow, and we're kind of right in the center. So we're gonna go ahead and run that. We gotta rip all this down, take our setup bearings out of the way, press our real bearings on. We should be all set. Definitely wanna make sure we keep our hands on our shims as they come out. Yoke off of here, bearing and pinion out, we'll go over to the press. Slide that in. Go ahead, put the crush sleeve on there too. All right, that should do it. Go put a new seal in here too. From here, we have to set a preload on this bearing. So we're gonna have to tighten it down quite a bit. And then get our torque wrench, and we will check preload once we think it's tight. Tighten that up just for now, and then we'll go ahead, tighten this down until we have the right amount of preload, so I gotta get the big bar now. Okay, so now we have to set preload on the bearings, and we have that crush sleeve that's down inside of here. What I have to do is tighten this nut enough to crush that sleeve, and that's gonna put a certain amount of preload on the bearings. I've got this cool little tool that we've made so it can hold the yoke here. So what I have to do, get the biggest bar I have in the shop, and try to tighten this nut. It takes a lot of force, but we'll get there. Ooh, getting close now. We'll put a little more on it and then we'll check our preload. Okay. We'll check our preload on our bearings. Should be between 14 and 19 inch-pounds, and we come in right at 15. All right, preload is set. Our backlash comes in at 10, so that's right where we want to be. So we're going to call this all buttoned up.
Now we can go ahead and reassemble the rear axle, starting with the bearing and the seals. Throw the axles in, get the clips on it. Just like before, I'm using a magnet to reinstall the C-clips. With both axles installed, I'll put on a new gasket and seal everything up with the rear cover. Last thing we'll do is put on our Duralast brake drum and our brake system will be complete.
With the popularity of these OBS trucks like our 96 Tahoe, a lot of you guys are doing a lot to add horsepower, and even beyond that, you guys are doing LS swaps. Now, FiTech has you covered in the fuel delivery side of things. The best thing about this GMT 400 platform is that they have a serviceable in-tank fuel pump, and FiTech has multiple solutions for your needs. Anything from your 255 liter per hour pump for basic horsepower, all the way up to your 440 liter per hour pump for some pretty serious horsepower. They have a couple pumps right here in the middle. This one's 340 liter per hour, and they even have a pump that is E85 rated. They come with the pigtails and the screens and what you guys need to install them. So if you're looking for fuel system solutions, FiTech fuel injection should have something for your needs.
Up next, the Tahoe is almost ready for the road, but we need to address the stance for bigger wheels and tires. I have all the brakes buttoned up on the rear axle and I have gear oil in the differential. And now for one last step to finish this thing up, replace the old worn out shocks with some Duralast twin tubes. Duralast offers a full line of shocks and struts for your vehicle. They're constructed using high quality components that meet or exceed OE performance for ride height and stability, which gives your vehicle quicker response, making for better comfort and handling. They also offer monotube upgrades that can replace many dual tube applications. Duralast shocks are tested under extreme loads to ensure your repairs don't come back, and they are backed by a limited lifetime warranty. No matter what vehicle you're working on, Duralast has parts that can help get it back on the road. We got our Duralast shocks from the AutoZone Pro website. Installation of the shocks is pretty straightforward. Just 2 bolts at the top and 1 bolt at the bottom. If you don't have access to a lift, just make sure you put your truck up on jack stands and let the axle sag all the way out.
The overall look that we're going for with our two-door Tahoe is a little bit more aggressive than stock. We're going to be running a bigger set of wheels and tires, and we're going to be putting those on shortly. But to pull that off, we want to level off the front of the Tahoe, so we're going to be adding a different set of torsion bar keys. We got these from Summit Racing, and they're clocked just a little bit differently in here in the casting, and that's going to apply a little more pressure to the torsion bar, hence leveling out our Tahoe. All right, all I'm gonna do to adjust the torsion bar keys is to make sure there's the same amount of thread showing on each one of these adjustment bolts. And then once we get the wheels and tires on this thing and then set it on the ground, we'll make our final adjustments from there. For the wheel and tire combo for our Tahoe, we chose the General Grabber ATX. It's an aggressive all-season, all-terrain tire for light trucks and SUVs, designed to balance exceptional off-road capability with on-road performance. It comes complete with the Duragen technology, which provides robust strength and durability. It also has low road noise and a long-lasting tread wear. It carries the 3-peak mountain snowflake symbol for severe winter conditions. It's available in raised white letters or a solid black wall. The size we chose for our Tahoe is a 275/70/17. We paired our General Grabbers with a set of Vision wheels that we picked up from Summit Racing. Now, we've buttoned up quite a bit of work on our two-door Tahoe, and one thing that we don't want to overlook are the weather strips and the seals around the truck. Now, over time, this can show signs of wear and tear, can actually let moisture inside of your vehicle. Well, Steele Rubber Products has a full line of items for your cars, your trucks, your street rods, and even marine applications. Now, we picked up a couple of pieces for our two-door Tahoe, and the weather stripping is designed from original parts for superior fitment and seal. They are made with a superior grade 100% EPDM sponge rubber extrusion designed to last, which means it will not fade, shrink, or crack. They are excellent at resisting moisture, the ozone, and even UV exposure. They have an easy to install push-on design that requires no adhesive. They also offer the sway bar end links and the hood and fender bumpers. So if you guys are looking to replace any seals around your project, why don't you check out Steele rubber products? Now we've got a couple more things to tackle on the two-door Tahoe before it hits the street, but for now, that's gonna button it up for us today.
Wheels look good?
Yeah, don't they look good? Get these seals on here, get this thing out on the road and see what it's like.